I'm 57 now. When I look in the mirror, I see the lines on my face, the gray in my hair, and usually I feel proud of the life I've lived. I was a professional, a journalist. I worked for Sky News. I wrote for major British newspapers. I was the person people trusted to tell them the truth about the world. I was the one who explained the Middle East to millions of viewers back home. I stood in front of cameras, holding a microphone, looking serious and informed, telling you exactly who the bad guys were. And I was wrong about all of it. I was wrong about Muslims. I was wrong about the Quran. But most devastatingly, I was wrong about myself. I almost missed the most important truth of my life because I was too arrogant to question the script I had been given. I am sharing this today not because it is easy. It is actually humiliating to admit how blind I was. But because I know there is someone watching this right now who is exactly where I was. You are successful. You are smart. You think you know the world. But inside, there is a hollow space that no career, no award, and no amount of money has ever been able to fill. If you give me 10 minutes, I want to tell you how I filled that space. And I want to save you the 30 years it took me to figure it out. The career that cost me my soul. Let me take you back to my 30s. I was at the peak of my career. I was aggressive, ambitious, and hungry for the next big story. In the newsrooms of London, the narrative about Islam was already written before we even arrived on the scene. We didn't go to the Middle East to find the truth. We went there to confirm what we already believed. We saw beards and saw threats. We saw hijabs and saw oppression. We heard the adhan, the call to prayer, and we heard noise and extremism. I remember sitting in hotel lobbies in Cairo or Beirut or Baghdad, drinking with other Western journalists. We would laugh about the locals. We felt superior. We thought we were the enlightened ones, bringing civilization to the backward masses. We looked at Muslims praying in the street with a mix of pity and suspicion. Why do they do that, we'd ask? Don't they have anything better to do? I chased every accolade a journalist could want. I wanted the bylines. I wanted the respect of my editors. And I got it. I got the praise. I got the salary. But every night when I went back to my empty hotel room or my flat in London, the silence was deafening. I told myself I was happy. I told myself I was free. I was a modern Western woman, liberated from religion, liberated from tradition. But was I free? I was a slave to my career. I was a slave to public opinion. I was a slave to my own anxiety. I was drinking too much to numb the stress. I was popping pills to sleep. I was constantly chasing the next deadline, terrifyingly afraid that if I stopped running, I would have to face the person in the mirror. I had freedom, but I had no peace. I had facts, but I had no truth. The cracks in the wall. The change didn't happen overnight. It happened in the quiet moments that the cameras didn't capture. I remember one specific day in a war-torn region. We were interviewing a family who had lost everything. Their home was rubble. They had lost a child. As a journalist, I was trying to get the sound bite, the cry of despair that would look good on the evening news. But the father, he wasn't screaming. He wasn't cursing. He was sitting on a broken concrete block, holding his weeping wife, and he was calm. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Alhamdulillah, praise be to God." I was shocked. I asked my translator, why is he praising God? He just lost everything. The translator looked at me and said, "He says that everything belongs to God, and to him we shall return. He is patient." I couldn't process it. In my world, if you lost your car keys, you cursed. If you lost your job, you fell apart. Here was a man who had lost his life's work and his flesh and blood, and he had a dignity and a peace that I, with all my money and safety, did not possess. I walked away from that interview feeling angry. I was angry because he had something I didn't. I wanted to dismiss him as a fanatic, but I knew he wasn't. He was just anchored in something I couldn't see. These moments kept happening. A taxi driver who refused to cheat me, even though he was poor and I was a rich foreigner, because he feared God. A woman in a refugee camp who insisted on sharing her only piece of bread with me, treating me like a queen while I had looked down on her as a victim. I started to wonder, what is this book they are reading? What is this faith that makes people so resilient, so generous, so unshakable in the face of horror? But I was afraid to ask. I was afraid that if I looked too closely, my whole worldview would collapse. So I pushed it down. I went back to London. I wrote more stories about terrorism and conflict. I kept feeding the beast. The breaking point. 5 years ago, I hit a wall. My mother passed away, and shortly after, my marriage fell apart. The career I had sacrificed everything for suddenly felt meaningless. The awards on my shelf felt like pieces of tin. I was 52 years old, alone in a big house, and for the first time, the silence was too loud to ignore. I was depressed. I sat in my garden one rainy afternoon, and I asked out loud to a God I wasn't sure I believed in, is this it? Is this all there is? 30 years of running, and for what? I remembered that man in the rubble. I remembered his Alhamdulillah. I decided, secretly, to buy a Quran. I didn't tell my colleagues. I didn't tell my friends. I bought an English translation and hid it in my bedside drawer, like it was contraband. One night, unable to sleep, I opened it. I expected to find the hate manual that the media had told me about. I expected to find anger. Instead, I found, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I read about Jesus. I read about Moses. I read about Mary, honored above all women. I read verses that spoke about the stars, the mountains, the biology of the human embryo, the structure of the universe. But what hit me hardest wasn't the science or the history. It was the way the Quran spoke directly to me. It felt like the author knew my secrets. Unquestionably, by the remembrance of Allah, hearts are assured. I stopped on that verse. My heart had never been assured. My heart had been anxious, racing, fearful, proud, jealous, but never assured. I read about the purpose of life, not to accumulate wealth, not to be famous, but to know your Creator. It was so simple, and it was so heavy. I realized that for 30 years, I had been reporting on the outer Islam, the politics, the wars, the bad actors. I had never touched the inner Islam, the connection between a soul and its maker. The surrender. The struggle went on for months. My ego fought back. You can't do this, a voice in my head said. You are a Western journalist. You drink wine. You don't wear a scarf. What will your friends say? They will think you've lost your mind. They will say you've been brainwashed. I was terrified of losing my status. I was terrified of being judged by the very people I used to judge with. But the pain of living a lie became greater than the fear of the truth. One Friday, I found a small mosque in London. I parked my car 2 streets away so no one would see me. I put on a scarf, feeling clumsy and awkward. I walked in. I sat at the back. I watched the women pray. They bowed down, putting their foreheads on the ground. The most vulnerable position a human can be in. Heads lower than their hearts. And I started to cry. I didn't just cry, I wept. I wept for the 30 years I had wasted. I wept for the arrogance I had carried. I wept for the lies I had written. And I wept because finally I was home. I realized that I wasn't bowing to a man. I wasn't bowing to a culture. I was bowing to the source of peace. That day, I took my Shahada. There were no cameras, no microphones, no headlines. Just me, a few sisters, and God. The aftermath and my message to you. Life didn't become perfect after that. Some friends stopped calling. My editor looked at me differently. People made jokes behind my back. But for the first time in 57 years, I didn't care. Because I had the one thing I had been chasing my entire life: peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that stays with you when you lose your job, or when you get sick, or when you are alone at night. I used to think Islam was a cage. I realize now that my life was the cage. My materialism was the cage. My ego was the cage. Islam was the key that unlocked the door. I look at the news now and I see the same stories I used to write. I see the fear-mongering. I see the twisting of facts. And my heart breaks. Not for the Muslims because they have Allah, but for the people watching who are being deceived. The people who are being kept away from the very cure they need. So here is my message to you. If you are watching this and you are 20 or 30 or 50 or 70, if you are feeling that emptiness that I felt, if you are suspicious of Islam because of what you've seen on the TV, do your own research. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Sky News. Don't listen to the politicians. Pick up the book. Read it with an open heart. Ask the Creator, if this is the truth, guide me to it. I was afraid to question what I had been taught. That fear cost me decades of my life. Don't let it cost you yours. We are not here to work, pay bills, and die. We are here for something much greater.